I didn't. I was going to have my hair done, but I didn't have time.
Makeup.
Wait. I don't
Hi,
need makeup.
everybody. We're live here. Nice to see a lot of friends online. Thank you for joining us. We have Nelson Willie, Anna, and John Doerr. Nice to see you. Nelson, can you explain what are you going to do today?
Okay, hi everybody. I will not say good morning, good afternoon, or good night because we have a lot of friends all over the world. So I don't know what time in their place. The idea today is to do something really informal. It's an informal chat about the new book because we don't have really new rules. We have the same rules redesigned, put in the new book, and we will talking about this. But before we start, I want to welcome John Doerr and Anna, and really thanks for accept our invitation. And before we talking about sailing. I want to comment this strange time that we are living now, because we are living here in Brazil, and Brazil is so big, we have different kind of situations. In north, we are almost okay. In southeast, we are sailing, but not completely safe. And here in south of Brazil, that's still winter time. We can sail, but we are not racing. The club is closed. The situation of COVID is still remain hard, and I guess at least 2 or 3 months to start to go down the curve. I don't know if Ricardo wants to talking about Rio, because
Rio, we started the sniper race last week. We have a big regatta. I started the activities. The yacht club is open. How is the sniper class, Anna, in Spain, in Murcia?
Snipes are getting more and more active after all the lockdown, but and we have had a couple of months that we have been able to do something on the water, but not everything as usual. But now we are getting into trouble again, and probably we will be closed again soon.
And John, how is the sailing community in England and Europe in general?
Well, I know more about England, my part of England. It's getting busier. At my own club, we had junior race week last week with 70 juniors participating in a slightly different week, because that's normally a very social week. And it's gradually getting going, but we're not encouraged to invite people for open meetings. The local community do not want us bringing people into our area, so we have some resistance for open meetings. So it's more about the social and being on the land than problems with being on the water.
Okay, so the situations, as I see, it's more or less the same in all over the world. We are not really safe. Now we miss Enoshima, because now in normal way we would be there, and the situation changed dramatically. So this makes the Olympics to change for the next year. And how was the process to change the rules because of the changing of Olympics?
the regulations were linked to the Olympic Games. So under the regulations as they were, the new rulebook would not have come into effect until after the Olympic Games. But there was no certainty, and there still is no certainty, unfortunately, that the Olympic Games will happen next year. So we put a proposition to Council that we would bring the new rulebook into effect on January the 1st in the 4-year cycle and not wait for the Olympics. We did talk to the athletes and the classes and the coaches before making that decision to assure them that there were no real big game changers that would affect the Olympic Games. So now we're on a 4-year cycle, and I expect that there'll be a submission to make that a permanent feature for the future.
And this makes a different situation where we will have two Olympics in the same rule book.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so the rules, the racing rules of sailing were international unified with the founding of IRLO, Yachting Racing Union, in 1907. And the revisions start on 1912, 1929, and then 1946, 1955, 59, and 1960, and then every 4 years. Now we have this new revisit book. And how is the process to do this review?
Every change in the rule book has to come through what we call a submission. So either national authorities or committee chairman of world sailing or classes can make submissions to change the rule book and anything else to do with world sailing. But that's the only way that we can get a change. And that's an important process because the submissions are published at least 2 months before the decision is made. And that means everybody can review the submissions and make comments on them so that when we actually get to make a decision about putting rules in the book, hopefully people have spotted all the things that are wrong with them. I wish they were perfect, but we haven't quite managed the perfect rule book yet. We've already got 20 ideas for the next rule book, and we haven't even started with this one yet. But that's basically the process. It always comes through world sailing through submissions.
Yeah, and also World Sailing published a study version that maybe we can show. That if somebody wants to see or to go deep in this process, it's possible to see the submissions related to the rules, what was accepted, what was not accepted, and it's in the World Sailing website.
Have the comments, have the comments and the links for the submission in the same document, so we can understand the reason and who is the guilt for the change. And also, this is a nice document.
So as you look at that document, every change to the rule book shows up in red font, and there's also a link to every change to the submission that caused the change. So you can find, if you try to understand the rule change, you can go to the submissions, and that will explain all the reasons why the change came into effect. And I'd like to just quickly, if I may, thank especially Dick Rose, who looks after this file. And I can tell you, this is thousands of hours of work. It is a huge task to keep this up together over the 4 years and put it together. All the Racing Rules Committee do a huge amount of work, but I think it's true, Anna, isn't it, that Dick is absolutely exceptional in the work that he does.
Yeah, he's absolutely amazing, and you can believe me, he's not going to miss a comma in 4 years. So he's the top guy there.
Okay, so if we see the changes in the rule books, our intention is to go step by step, follow the new book, but we can say the major changes in general, just to do some review, it's using hull instead of hull, crew, and equipment in normal position. Sail the course definition, because before was part of Rule 28, including support person in many rules. Also changed notice of race, using notice of race instead of sailing instructions, and important also the new exoneration rule. So this is talking about the general, and now we go step by step inside the book. So new changes in order. Blue, maybe can you show the
Sure.
book, and then we go following. So we start with race signs, flags,
Sure.
where we have in the book orange flag that means end of the starting line, and also we have blue flag as end of finish line. And now it's not necessary to repeat this on the sailing instructions. And also the victor that is related to new rule 37 is included now in the. Now, John, is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, I mean, as you said, one of the things that we always try to do when we're changing rules is we look at very common sailing instructions, and we go through the process. Should we put these into the rule book to save everybody having to write them in sailing instructions? So that is one of the sources of quite a lot of rule changes. And Victor, blue flag, orange flag is a perfect example of that process.
Perfect. Okay, and then we come to online rules document that includes possible change in these rules. So if we have something in the future, will be probably here. And also we have word sailing regulations, the case book, the call book for various disciplines, word sailing regulations with the status of a rule, appendix TS, hearing requests and hearing decision forms, rules for other windsurf competitions formats, test rules for umpire and radio sailing, notice of race guide, and sailing instructions guide. That was before. Some of the was in the appendix, now is in this place. This is a very important place that most of the people don't know that it exists, but it's important because there is a lot of rules and information there. Good. John, anything else, or can we go forward?
I mean, just very briefly, this list refers to documents that are referred to somewhere later in the Racing Rules of Sailing, in the book that's published. There are still even more documents that are not we'll be able to find everything. Obviously, that work is a bit slow at the moment because of the current situation of getting that sort of work done. But that's what we're trying to get to.
Nice. Okay, and then we go for
Just
to,
a second. Let's. I think every section we can stop for the question. We have already a question for flags. Angelo is a sailor from Annapolis. He sails J105, and his comment that the V flag is the class flag of J105.
Oh dear.
Interesting.
Then my only suggestion is that classes use their class, move to the system where you use the class emblem that's on your mainsail as your class flag. And then you avoid using international signals that will always have other meanings. So 505s used to use W, for instance. They now use the 505 symbol.
Right.
Perfect.
Let's go ahead.
Okay, so introduction, new clarification about the hail, protest or similar, not only English, as long as reasonable in understanding. So now you can use another word if it's understandable. This is here in, and also is also in a rule that we will see later. Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Definitions. And then we have minor things in definition, but we highlight three. We highlight finishing and start definition because of the definition of now it's only hull, not crew, nor equipment in normal position for finishing and start. And I don't know if you want to talk or comment about these two definitions. And also hull, the definition of hull, we need to look of the equipment regulation, because there is some discussions about the bowsprit, about if the helm is part of the hull. So in the equipment regulation is clear, the definition, and it's important to go there to see exactly what hull means.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that race management, race officers were not entirely unanimous about this, but the vast majority wanted to move to using the hull and not crew and equipment. It removes a number of difficulties. One is the old problem of the spinnaker not quite being set properly, the halyard being released, the sheets being released, the crew in the water. All of those issues are now resolved because it is only the hull that counts for starting and finishing. Quite a lot of race officers told us that they only use the hull, particularly on catamarans, because they can't actually see the bowsprit when they're looking down the starting line. So they always have used the hull anyway. There's always the problem at the finishing line when one boat blankets another and you can't see one boat behind another. That problem exists, and I don't think it really makes. In some circumstances, it will be better to use the spinnaker on a downwind finish. In other cases, it's easier to use the hull. But the other reason for change is we are moving towards technology, and it is not beyond the possibility that we will be using devices on boats that will determine when you start and when you finish. So tracking devices. And clearly they cannot be attached to the front of a spinnaker or equipment that's flapping around. They have to be fixed on equipment that is itself fixed. And that is one of the reasons for moving to the hull.
Very good. And just to be clear, so bowsprit or all the appendage or helm is not part of the hull by definition.
Well, we need to look one of the things we haven't quite done is all the work to link up. We've done some linking up work from the equipment rules of sailing into the racing rules, but you'll notice that hull is not in italics, so it's not a defined term. So you have to use hull in its normal use in language. And I would say that if most people would say that an external rudder is not part of the hull, a bowsprit is not part of the hull. It clearly starts to become difficult when you get an integrated bowsprit in the moulding. And that becomes slightly difficult, but there's a very few boats that actually have that as a problem. And the ERS, I think, is helpful because the ERS takes the stem line, I believe, and extends it, and that becomes the hull. So I think the ERS is useful and will help us solve some difficult problems, but there is no direct link from the ERS into this term hull in the racing rules of sailing.
Very good. Okay, so the next is sail the course. It's a new definition, but it's more or less the same that was in the Rule 28. So comes from the Rule 28 to the definition. And in my opinion, make a lot of sense to be as a definition. Any comments on that?
Well, it was expression that is repeated in different places in the rules, in different rules. So I think the Racing Rules Committee made a good decision to turn it into a definition, so that now everywhere in the rules it is used in the same, with the same meaning, with the same sense. So I think that was the intention, and it's a good one.
Correct.
Very good. Blue, do we have any questions
Yes,
or comments?
we have one question from Pico, but I think John answered that. It's about, he asked if the definition of rule is the same of the definition found in the equipment race of rule of sailing. So I think that's it's answered by John. That we needed to use the dictionary definition, but the equipment rule of sailing can be useful to understand that. That was okay. And now we have Robin. He's sailing about the foil moth going down the line with everything but the hull over the line. I think the moth sail here to windward, and have the mast over the start line, and the guy or hiking, everything outside. Can you comment on that, Anna or John?
Well, I don't think the mast is part of the hull. I don't think the wing is part of the hull, and I don't think the sailor is part of the hull. And this is one of those cases where it might even be more difficult for race officers judging moths than the current rule. On the other hand, one of the things that race officers told us is that what they want to do is to look at one level. When they're looking along the line, they don't want to have to look up at a mast, in front of the spinnaker, down to the water level, and moving their head to look. What they want is to be able to look in one line at one level. And so I agree, I don't think it's going to be perfect, but the general opinion is that it's a step in the right direction. And again, I come back to when we use technology to decide whether a boat is over.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. I have a final question. Catalan from Argentina. He's a sailor instructor and judge, and he would like to hear some comment on proper course definition, because now we have the word. The proper course is the course the boat choose. Now I have this word choose. in order to sail and finish as soon as possible in absence of the other boats. So what is the impact of the word choose?
What it's making clear is that there's no perfect course, that boats will have different opinions about what is their proper course.
Right.
In fact, so what this is trying to make it clear is that if you choose, as long as it is in order to sail the course and finish as soon as possible, it's the course you choose. It is not necessarily the course that somebody else would choose. So it is making it clear that proper course can be individual to each boat. And it depends on your assessment of the wind and the tide and the waves and all sorts of things about what you think is your proper course.
Right. Thank you, Joe. I think we have a case on this also.
Yes, and rules. Thanks, Blue, for mentioning that, because cases are one of the things that we look at, and we look at to see if we change the rules slightly, can we get rid of a case?
Right.
And that's one of the things that we try to do.
Right.
Okay, so we go to basic principles that add the discretionary penalties and exoneration in the concept. Because before we have only take penalties and accept the penalties, and now we have this discretionary penalties or better, we have exoneration and the possibility to exoneration in the concept. Maybe John can add something else.
I'm talking a lot, so Anna, if you want to join in, please do. But yes, I mean, it's clear that you break a rule, but you might be exonerated. So the basic principle of sportsmanship was actually incorrect. And also with discretionary penalties, well, I know I've broken a rule, but if it's a discretionary penalty and I'm only going to get a few points penalty, why should I retire? Surely I'm entitled to say, I'm sorry, I've broken a rule. What is my penalty? And we've provided that. We'll come across that later in the rule book, how we make, what is the procedure for actually implementing that. But we just think that this has brought the rules up to date with exoneration and discretionary penalties. So the action that's referred to here might be to report your breach to the protest committee, for example.
Very good. Anything to add, Anna?
No, that's exactly what it is.
Okay. So then we go to the fundamental rules that we include in our most important rule, safety support person. Also, we have a support person included in many rules, but also now it's part of the obligations of the support person to help boats in danger. Any comment on that?
Yeah, as you said, support persons have been included in more rules, so more obligations have been put to them, but they are very basic obligations, like to help those in danger, not to put trash on the water, and to help the race committee in rescue actions. So I don't think any support person could complain about that. But in fact, this means more obligations for them.
Perfect. And then number 2, fundamental rule 2, for fair sailing, we come back to disqualification not excludable. This is going back. So what the reason that we have again and not excludable?
Well, it's a long story that I won't bore everybody with. I think when we introduced when we introduced new Rule 69 and we changed from gross misconduct to misconduct, we sort of got a bit hung up because the penalty for Rule 69 is everything from a warning to leave the regatta, and even beyond that if it goes to a national authority. So I think we got into, well, for fair sailing, shouldn't we have some flexibility as well? But in practice, we have not come across any situations where we think that just a disqualification is okay. I mean, the fact is, if you break Rule 2, you are breaking the principles of sportsmanship. And that is a serious offence. And so we've reverted to DNE only.
And also, I think it's important to remark that Rule 2 is for sailing breaches, not only misconduct or whatever that is out of competition.
Yes, so fair sailing will affect the outcome of the competition.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then we go to Rule 5. This is new Rule 5 because governing authority, organizing authority and officials. This is the old Rule 84 that was promoted as a fundamental. In my opinion, it's very important because it was hiding in a Rule 84, and now is in the fundamental rules.
Yeah, it has more visibility now, and yeah, and it's a fundamental rule anyway, so it's in a better place.
Yeah. Also, I think that's put more organizing authority and officials in highlights, so they know that they are important, and also it is important that they follow the rules, like the sailors and the support persons.
Exactly.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Any comment?
No, it is just, we just think it is a fundamental rule of the sport that everybody who's organising the sport has to comply with the rules.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. World sailing regulations now includes the old fundamental 5, 6, and 7, plus advertising code, eligibility code, and sailor categorization codes. So now it's one fundamental that put all these regulations and codes inside. It's important to understand that not all are protestable.
Yes, so the number of codes was growing, and it's grown. I think there may even be one or two more being planned by various parts of the organisation. So we needed to create some space in the rule book. So we've done it this way. There's no actual change from the current rule book, I believe. It's just an organisational matter in the rules. And we still make it clear that unless protests are permitted in the regulation itself, then you cannot protest these rules. So the anti-doping code is not subject to protest by competitors, for instance. It is implemented by the anti-doping authorities. The two exceptions, the advertising code permits protests, and the classification code, sorry, the categorization code permits protests.
Let's explain. Now the rule that used to be classified about professional and amateur, now we are calling categorization code. That's something new also.
Yeah, and the reason is it's because the Paralympic questions about the last part before I go to part 2?
Let's see if I have some questions. No, not much question, but I have a friend from Russia, Qatar, Argentina, Brazil, United States. Big audience, almost 200 people, Anna. You're afraid of...
That's
We
very
should
scary.
put the fees up. We should increase the fees, Blue. Two drinks instead of one.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Yeah.
Okay, so part 2, we jump to rule 14, avoiding contacts. That now 14b, it's part of the new rule 43. They're talking about exoneration. I don't know if we jump 16.
Well, Nelson, just before you move on, there's one thing that we have made sure, and throughout the rule book, we've tried to be more specific about whether something should be in the notice of race or the sailing instructions. And we think that you need to know the rules of the regatta, that you need to know the rules of the event in the notice of race. It's too late in the sailing instructions. So, for instance, if you're going to invoke UPCUS, you have to do it in the notice of race, so that everybody has got time to read those rules before they get to the event. And that's something that follows, and we've tried to avoid either or, and we've certainly avoided having to put things in both sailing instructions and the notice of race, just as a general comment on the way through.
Good. Okay, so there is nothing new in 10, 11, 12, and 13. So the new 14, the old 14.b went to a new rule 43, and then we arrive on 16. Is changing course. 16.2 include the term in the beat to windward. That the only place we found that definition is in the case 132. That I know that's under review. Maybe John, if you want to comment.
I'm interested to know if there's anybody in the world who likes this rule, either the old version or the new version.
Well, this is a good question to ask the people to write in the chat in YouTube what they think about the 16.2, if it's necessary, or just 16.1 cover most of all the situations. It's a good question.
And I think the fact that we've rewritten this rule in almost every version of the rule book since it's appeared gives an indication. And I certainly don't know of any protest being upheld under 16.2. I don't know. I'm sure it has happened, but
okay. In the end, the big changes pass.
Yes, but the changes are now it only applies on a beat to windward now, so it does not apply downwind. The rest of the change is really what we call semantic. It doesn't change. There were just some situations. It used to talk about passing astern. Well, sometimes boats would bear away, but they wouldn't actually cross the wake of the boat. They wouldn't sail that far. So because they tack or something before they crossed the stern. So there was a debate about whether that meant the rule applied or not. And the people that came up with this felt that the new version was better, and that we only want to prevent a starboard tack boat from bearing away, not changing course. So we're worried about. The rule came in because we were worried about what's called the dial down, which became a tactic in match racing, essentially. And the dial down is a tactic on the beat with the starboard tack boat bearing away. and that's why it's been changed.
Okay.
We have a lot of comments. We have a lot of answer. You know, Josh say that he never used this rule, and John Christmas is saying that rule 60.1 would cover everything. And you have Josh. Josh is here. Hello, Josh. And he doesn't like the rule also. Have one Anna like it, and she applied John. She applied the rule last year, and
Okay.
but the majority public think that you can live without the rule. This rule is just complicated.
I'll pass that on to the next chairman of Racing Rules Committee.
Very good. Okay, then we jump to 18.3, passing ahead to in the zone. Looks like the title was changing to be consistent with the rule. Nothing else.
That's it, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think now we will end with the discussion of tacking, what tacking mean in the zone or not. I think now that discussion is over with the new title, but nothing else.
Okay, perfect. Then we choose the 20.4 additional requirements for hails. This is also in the beginning. A comment about hails. If the hail may not be heard, the boat shall also make signs. Normally in match race we do, and also the sailing instructions can describe another options, not only arm sails, but radio or
whistle,
whatever.
Whistle. Three blasts on a whistle. Could be a request for room to tack.
Or horns.
Or horns, yeah, anything. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. We jump to part 3. Any comments on part 2?
Okay. No, have this comment. Carlos Garcelo, our big friend from Argentina, his comment that it's not time to have a definition of sailing to windward. I think this is the case. Yeah, that's it.
We'll come to this. We'll come to this issue, and it's one that we are currently working on about what is a beat to windward. And I don't know if you want to. Should I address it now, or should I wait until we come up a bit later?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we use the expression beat to windward because we need to distinguish between that and downwind legs. But we had a real problem identified last year that would have created an unsafe situation. And we discussed whether we should in fact introduce an emergency rule to solve the problem. And in the end, we decided to use what became case 132. Case 132 is now under review because of the new rule book. And I can tell you that we have not yet found very satisfactory text for the new case. I hope we will do. We have a little bit of time yet before the November meeting. But it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. And the good news is we'll find out when we look at Rule 42 that we've taken that expression out of Rule 42. So we now only have to deal with it as far as Rule 18 is concerned, and Rule 16.2. But yeah, and we could take the next 2 hours, I expect discussing
suggestions from Gasteluto thinking about to put this in definitions. Okay, let's go to part 3, conduct
Okay,
of race.
just more 2 questions on part 2. Joe is comment that why is the exoneration still on Rule 18.3 when everywhere else is on now in Rule 43?
So say that again. Is it?
It's a comment about Rule 18.3. We have exoneration somewhere here. Let's see. It's not a real exoneration. I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So where is exoneration that's not in 43?
Yes, that's the question.
Perhaps the questioner can come back to us with a.
Okay, I'll test the question. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it could be nice if Josh can extend his question and explain why he sees an exoneration in 18.3.
Yeah, there is some disagreement online. Sylvia say that there is no exoneration in 18.3. I think it's more about the application of the rule, not really a exoneration. Okay, let's move ahead. Let's move on. Now, Ruth is asking in 20.4 about the signal. He's asking if it's necessary to be arm movement. We explained that can be a sign, radio, horn, and John.
Yes,
Not
I mean,
necessary.
when we discussed the submission, I mean, there were various suggestions, and we decided to leave it to each class as appropriate. So if you're sailing a super maxi, then radio is probably the most appropriate method. But if you're in the blind world championships, it's probably not appropriate. They need some other system. If you're in dinghies, but it's blowing very strong wind, I mean, dinghies don't carry VHF radios. So we thought it was best to leave it to the event if they wanted to specify the method of making that hail.
Okay.
So we are not seeing the screen. I am not seeing the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, we've lost the rules, Blue.
Okay, sorry.
So we go to part 3.
Sorry, let's go back. Okay.
Okay. We anyway still have some dark parts in the middle, but we can read. So Rule 28, sailing the course. Now 28.1 mentioned the definition, sail the course, and 28.2 also mention the definition and delete the old part that now is in the definition. So now 28 is shorter, and for me it's very clear. Any comment, Anna? Do you want to say something?
No, it's just I want to bring everybody's attention to the title of the rule. It has saying changed to sailing the race. That was, I think, it was the original intention of the rule. However, the concept of sailing the course was mixed up with different meanings, and now it's solved.
You want to add something, John?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
So then, and now the race committee can score NSC if a boat not sailed the course and he saw without a hearing. We will see this forward. This change, the Rule 28, also helps to clarify situations that we had between Rule 35 and 90.3, the scoring rules. And the new Rule 28 somehow help to clarify the situation that we had before. 37, search and rescue instructions. This is a new rule. This is related with V flag. When the race committee display a V flag with one sound signal, all the official boats and support boats shall monitor race committee communication for rescue instructions. So it's new and was from long time in the sailing instructions, but now it becomes a rule. I think it's important. I think it's really a rule that is important to be in. Any comments on part 3, Blue?
No, we have just a clarification from George that he was mentioning 18.3 in match race, not in fleet race. And yes, there is some exoneration aspect. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, just to clarify, it is not our intention to go in the appendixes this time. This live is only about the rules. Maybe we talk about Appendix A and the most important change, and then we will leave the appendix for the next live in the future.
Okay, let's move ahead. Part 4.
Part 4, other requirements while sailing. Now part 4 is divided in 2 sections. A is the racing matters and B, equipment. Do you want to comment on that, John? Justice?
No, I mean, we've done this partly setting up for the future as we are trying to align racing rules with equipment rules. We know that in the future it's going to be very helpful to have equipment type rules in one place, because we're contemplating where a term is defined in the ERS of somehow making that clear in the RRS, but we want to limit it to that section because, for instance, so the ERS define a boat, for instance, but we don't want the same definition of a boat for racing rules, because, for instance, when you touch a mark, we want, if the crew touch a mark, that's to break Rule 31. But the equipment rules will never include the crew in the definition of the boat. So there's quite a lot of issues to align, and this was just the first step on the way. We also just think it's clearer to put equipment things in one place and not equipment things in another place. So it's nothing more to it than that. Okay. And then Rule 40 looks like a big change, but in fact there's very little change. It's been done to make it a lot easier to write sailing instructions. So a sailing instruction that now says Rule 40 applies at all times while afloat is now a valid sailing instruction, whereas previously it was an ineffective sailing instruction.
Great.
Perfect. Okay, and then we jump to 42.3 exceptions. The exception applies also on the B2. May be bullets in any number of times. These are the new in 42. Any comments that you want to add?
I think there's a couple, Nelson, if I may. We talked to most of the foiling classes, and each foiling class probably, well, one of the issues is, do they want to allow pumping to maintain foiling as well as initiate foiling? And most of the classes came back to us and said, no, they did not want that. But of course, this is a rule that class rules can change. So if classes want to permit foiling by pumping to maintain foiling, they need to put that as a class rule. You cannot put it as a sailing instruction.
Joe, can you repeat the change, because we have a little problem with the sound.
Okay.
Can you repeat the rule change, the actual rule, and what the class rule can do, please?
So the new rule allows foiling to be initiated by pulling the sail any number of times. It does not permit foiling to be maintained by continuing to pump. That was agreed with all of the all the foiling classes that we could make contact with. Of course, there's more and more of those now. So if a foiling class wants to be able to pump to maintain foiling, they need to put that in the class rules to permit it.
Okay, guys, sorry for the interruption. I have a little battery problem.
Very good. Anything else in Rule 42 that you want to add, Anna?
No, in this 42.3c, people will miss the expression on a bit, except on a bit to windward. But actually, the way the rule applies is going to be very similar, because you can surf, you cannot surf upwind unless there is a wave coming from a motorboat. And then the question is, why shouldn't I take advantage of these waves? So even if this except on a bit to windward sentence is missing, the rule is not going to apply differently.
Thank you. Okay.
We have a question. I think before we change the rule, I think the rule 42, you can discuss a bit more, because we have an interesting question, because we discussed that Mark is asking if ouching is still prohibited to initiation foiling. Actually, this is a comment from NACLA sailors that they really don't want to pump. Pump is not really effective to foil, but we saw some people try to ouching. So that's I believe that's why there's a comment from Mark. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I've seen ouching I've penalised NACRA for ouching, and they were surprised. And I said, you need to change your class rules if that's what you have to do. It's quite simple. If they want to ouch, they need to change the class rules.
Okay. And there is Joe asked to come back to Rule 41. Can you see that there is this last paragraph was deleted? You would like to explain on this, explanation on this?
Yes. Well, I can do my best. this was always a difficult rule, a difficult phrase. And one of the things is that it was contrary to the rest of the rule. You have a rule that says a boat shall not receive outside help except to help a crew who is ill, injured, or in danger. And then you say, but if they gain an advantage, we're going to penalise you. Well, they haven't broken the rule, because the rule says you're allowed to do it. So how can you penalise somebody for not breaking a rule? We also got into, well, what's a significant advantage? And one way and another, you always, if you get outside help, you always gain an advantage, but almost by definition. Otherwise, it's not helpful. And we then went through the thought process. You know, if somebody's in, would you really put yourself in danger in order to get help, in order to get an advantage?
No way.
No way.
No, you won't do that. So why do we need this? Why do we need this paragraph? You won't do all these things in order to gain a significant advantage. It just doesn't happen. So if you capsize and somebody puts you back on your boat because they decide you were in danger and they pull you out of the water and they put you back on your boat and then you sail on, does that mean you would now capsize deliberately in order to be rescued, to be put back on your boat in order to sail faster? It just doesn't happen. So we thought it was unnecessary and we took it out.
Good explanation.
Very great, John. Thank you very much. Good.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So,
here you are, the rule 43. We talk about a lot about.
So now the 43 is new and includes 14.b, 21, and 64.1. We took the 43.2. If you are exonerated, you don't need to take a penalty, and also the basic principles say so. And it's clear that the rule exonerates the boat, not the rule exonerates the boat, not the protest committee. So everything is in the rule.
Yeah, I think it was very important to have in a rule that to have written that a boat that is exonerated does not need to take a penalty. Otherwise, it was not clear before, or it seemed not to be clear enough. So now it is. So exoneration happens on the water, definitely.
John?
No, that's fine. I mean, really, there's no change to the rules here. This is just a reorganization of rules. I think it's easier when coaching and trying to teach people the rules, that there's now a much clearer process because this is all together. So you break a rule, you then look to see if you are exonerated for breaking the rule. And if you're not exonerated, do I need to take a penalty? If I don't take a penalty, I can be penalized. That's a step process that is now followed all the while. And it has finally cleared up that you never need to protest somebody in order to be exonerated, because the rule has already exonerated you.
Right.
Okay, so 47, trash disposal. Now the support people is included. I don't think that we need a comment on that. 48.2. It's about the crew when the boat, when leave the boat or when the boat is capsized. Who wants to talking about?
Well, we had a lot of trouble with questions and answers, and that's another source of rule changes, is questions and answers about the boat that capsizes and the crew are not in contact with the boat and the boat crosses the finishing line and blah 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 blah, and all sorts of problems with that, and we think we've now fixed it. So now you have to be in contact with the boat before the crew resumes sailing the boat to the next mark. The fact was, under the old rules, if you capsize going downwind, about has the boat finished or not. Well, now we think it's clear.
Oh, John, sorry. We have another audio problem. Can you repeat the boat capsizing across the line, the finish line again, please?
Right. So now, if we look at the definition of finishing, it is when the first part of the hull crosses the finishing line. Nothing about normal position. So if the crew fall off the boat and the boat drifts across the finishing line, the boat has finished.
Okay, that's important. There are some.
However, if it's before the finishing line, it's not a drifting situation. You cannot. The crew that are on board cannot carry on sailing the boat and leave the crew behind, because the person who went in the water must be back in contact with the boat before the crew resume sailing the boat. So you can't leave somebody behind. Mm-hmm. But the boat finishes if you drift across the finishing line. And again, we come back, it's a little bit like Rule 41. Would anybody deliberately capsize in order to drift across the finishing line to take advantage of this rule? I doubt it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, now we go to 50, a new 50, competitor clothing and equipment. B, the weight of the trapeze and hiking harness increase from 4 to 6 kilograms maximum. And C, from 2023, the trapeze harness should have a quick release in accordance with ISO 10862. So this is new. I know that the quick release is related with safety situation, and I know that this will impact all the classes with trapeze, and I don't know if the classes can change or not this the weight of the. I know that cannot change the maximum, but it's a good discussion. What do you think, Anna?
Well, they cannot change the maximum weight. This is not one of the rules mentioned in Rule 86, so they cannot change the maximum weight. However, 50.1c includes or gives the classes the possibility to make a small change in there. Is that if they want to use quick release harnesses or not, but nothing else. They cannot change anything else.
Yes, I think this is going to be an interesting rule when it comes out. It was a submission by the RYA after a lot of research by their technical group. And I think they believe that because the harness has to have positive buoyancy, if you went for a maximum weight of 6 kilos, you've got to also have 6 kilos of buoyancy. And that will prohibit people making deliberately heavy trapeze harnesses. But I think we'll have to wait and see how this one unfolds.
Yeah, also there are some questions about classes like star, solings, that they hanging in the trapeze and on side of the boat. What kind of system they should adapt to comply with this rule?
Yeah, I mean, the only point I would make is this submission was approved 2 years ago. And so all of the classes have been given proper notice of this change more than 2 years. And we have not had a single comment from a single class in the last 2 years about this change.
And now we are doing also we have 3 years to comply, because
for the quick release harnesses, yeah, I mean the maximum weight goes up to 6 kilograms on the 1st of January. But the quick release aspect of it is not in force until January 23, and that is to give manufacturers time to make trapeze harnesses available that comply with the standard.
Okay. Any comments on that, Blue, from the audience?
No, just on our last live we did a demonstration of the quick release. I still have the trapeze. But people don't know. They usually has some. One is a cord. There is also a red button, and so I'm already compliant, John, with the rules. 3 years before.
Well done, Blue.
Okay. So 55.3 sheeting sails, clear definition of outrigger, and bunking now is in a separate item. I don't have any comments on that. I don't know about you.
I mean, this is one area where we've linked up with the equipment rules of sailing to make sure that we're consistent between the two books. We were inconsistent in the previous editions. So outrigger is now defined for those boats that use equipment rules of sailing, and we've taken it out of the racing rules of sailing, but you still cannot sheet over or through a device that exerts outward pressure, etc. So we don't think there's a change in the racing rules themselves, but this is the first time you'll see that we have now referred to a definition in the equipment rules of sailing, and that is just, we're trying to get to better document management where we do not have definitions repeated in 2 different books, because it's very difficult to keep everything in step. But I think Blue researched the ERS version, and it's the same as it was in the racing rules last time, I think.
Yes, I did. Let's see.
Yeah, this is where talking about 55.4 head sails and spinnaker, the definition of head sail and spinnaker that was in the rule before, and now it's in equipment and rules of sailing. And Blue checked to see if change when went to the equipment and rules of sailing. And the answer was not. No, it's the same. It's the same.
Yeah, same rules. 70. The girth is 75% of the mid girth. No? The half leach point is 75% of the foot length. It's the same. It's not. Okay. But I see some rate rule. They are doing some change on that also because of the code 0. There are some developed also on this on some rate rule.
Yeah, it's important to check the equipment rules of sailing in order to, because this is a new version, just released, I think, maximum a month ago. And then we go 56, fog signs and lights and traffic separation schemes. 56.1, when so equipped, a boat shall sound fog signs and show lights. This was a little bit different before, but now if the boat is equipped and the conditions require, she should show lights and sound fogs. John?
Well, it simply cleans up what was a technical problem in the rules before. I mean, the rules required a boat to show lights. It said when safety requires before, and the problem was that if it went and it's just a technicality really, but we think it's better that class rules tell you to have the lights that you need. So if you're sailing under IRC or IMS or any of the offshore classes or offshore regulations, you have to have lights, and then you have to use them. But unless your class or rating rules require you to have lights, clearly you don't, because you haven't got them on the boat. It's
very good. So before we go to part 5, any questions or any rules that you want to cover that we missed? Blue, we have a
few questions. Hold on. Let's check it. I was trying to answer sort of about the sun. Josie is asking what is a bunkie. We did a live about equipment rules. I can show a picture, I guess. No, I'm not ready, but I remember we showed. We did a lot of live. We cover all the rule book, but I'm not finding anymore. I remember.
So what is the question?
What's a bunkie? It's the bow on the stern of the boat.
It's the opposite of a bowsprit.
Good definition.
To fix the
it's been in the racing rules. It's been in the racing rule book almost since the beginning, by the way. So it's not a change.
But when you read the book again, realize that you don't know everything.
Okay,
great.
And anything else from, or can we go to part 5?
Now we have some questions about the traffic separation schemes. Can you give it some talk about this change or the impact of this rule on our race?
That is not new. It has been in the rule book for quite a while now. It was previously, what is that? 48.2. So there's no change in there.
No, I mean the traffic scheme. Yes, we just need to respect the traffic separate scheme. No?
Yes.
We don't have. I think this is more common in England. You have this. We don't have this in Brazil.
Yeah, it's used in England, in Argentina,
Australia.
In Spain we have.
Spain.
Yeah.
In the Mediterranean, it's used. Well, so one of the things is that there are about 6 different 6 different versions of traffic separation schemes around the world. One of the problems is that sailing boats almost always break the traffic separation scheme rules whenever they cross a traffic separation zone. I mean, I don't want to take an awful lot of time this evening on this because it's of limited value. If anybody wants a further discussion, I'm very happy to respond. But the fact is that most traffic separation schemes say that if you're crossing a separation scheme, you have to do it at right angles as quickly as possible. Well, if you're sailing a sailing boat, you can't cross at right angles if that's directly to windward. So as soon as you sail across a traffic separation scheme, you're breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that that then becomes subject to protest. Then the protest committees start having to interpret traffic separation schemes. So we created an Appendix TS, which is used by boats racing. Now, it is not the same as the law. Now, so you can have the problem, but we actually have the problem all over the place, where you might break the law, but you don't break the racing rule. Well, the law is subject to the pilot authorities of the maritime authorities, and they will decide whether you are going to get prosecuted or not. They will only prosecute generally if you cause a problem. So the fact that you don't cross at right angles, if you don't cause a problem, they won't prosecute you. But that would not stop a competitor from protesting you, and the protest committee would have to uphold it because you've broken the rule. So we so we developed Appendix TS to get over that problem. And so the Appendix TS is now referred to in the rule book.
Okay, great. Okay,
so let's go to part 5. Protest hearing, headdress, hearings, misconduct and appeals. Preamble explain about the protest forms. Now we have 2 forms, one that requests a hearing and another form for decision. In the preamble is writing that the word sailing is accepting suggestions about the forms. Is not in the online documents yet.
Correct. We're working on it.
Yeah, and but will be separate forms. Do you know the reason to have these two different forms, John?
Yes. I think the protest form in the book became out of date, partly because we have 5 different kinds of hearings. We have protests, requests for redress, support person hearings, request to reopen, and misconduct hearings. And the protest form didn't really reflect all those possibilities. And the protest form had become really more a checklist for the protest committee with ticking boxes all over the place in the decision form. And in practice, what people are doing is using typically a Word version of the decision form and doing it electronically. They're not printing the decision off and writing it by hand, typically. You can still do it with the new forms, but we basically updated the form, I think 3 years ago, Anna, we started doing that.
Yeah, more or less.
We've been testing the new form, and it's just more user-friendly. And I think that as we go forward, I mean, and COVID situation is likely to bring it on, we're going to move more and more to electronic forms being submitted in any case. And the old protest form is not a very easy form to turn into electronic document. So that's where we've come from. And I think the most important statement here is the racing rules do not require a particular form to be used. They only require certain information to be provided when you either protest or make a request. And
so you can use any piece of paper.
A piece of paper is as long as go to the rule see what you have to include, write it on a piece of paper, and give it to the race committee. You've done what you have to do.
Right.
Okay, so then we go to 60 and includes support person in all the process. This is, I don't know if you want to add something.
Well, sorry to keep going, but I mean, there's an important addition to 60.1, which is 60.1c, because it's never been that clear. What if you're a boat and you want to? We get people protesting people for misconduct. Well, it's not, it's a report, but it wasn't actually in the rule that you could make a report. So we've now put that in the rule. So if you want to report a support person or somebody else for misconduct, you can make a report and you can request the protest committee to take action. So I think that's an important addition to 60.1.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And then we go to 61.1, protest requirements, that we highlight 4. If you want to
Yes.
about it.
That serious damage or injury becomes known. Well, some boats have used.
Sorry again. I have another problem. Please repeat the change on.
Okay.
We are talking about
61.14. Sorry.
So 60.14 now has added, at the time of the incident, it is obvious to the protesting boat. So what you can't do is when you get ashore, find out that there was serious damage or the crew was danger or injured, and then justify not having shouted protest or put your flag up. It has to be at the time. And the concept is that if you have a bad accident, everything's happening, and safety becomes the most important thing, not putting your flag up. That's the important thing. But if you're not aware that there's any danger, you've got to put your flag up.
Makes sense. Yeah, make a lot of sense. And the 61.1b, the information about the protest from the race committee and protest committee should be published into the time limits.
Yeah. This is an example of a very common sailing instruction. But in fact, a lot of sailing instructions were not very carefully written. They used to say a notice posted would satisfy the requirement. Well, it's very important that it's within the protest time limit, because after that, the competitors don't have to look at the notice board, so they wouldn't necessarily know that they're being protested. So it's very important that the notice is posted before the protest time limit. If the committee, whichever it is, becomes aware of an incident that justifies a protest after the protest time limit, of course they can still protest, but now they've got to make every effort to contact the sailor directly to inform them of the protest. Putting it on the notice board is no longer sufficient.
Okay, and then we go to 62, redress. If you want to comment before something else, but this is what we pick up. 62.1b, now is necessary to give redress for damage or injury that the infringed boat has taken a proper penalty.
I think that will also end with a never-ending discussion in a situation where a boat is asking for redress. he comes in front of the jury and said, yeah, I was on a starboard. I had a collision with a boat coming on port. I was thinking, I couldn't even see his sail number. And then the protest committee could either believe his story and give him redress, or just ignore him because he didn't bring to the protest committee the guilty one. And people have been always discussing about that. Now it is clear that we need a responsible vote for the incident before giving a redress to the other one.
Yeah, for me, this is one of the most important changes in the rules, because before we had a lot of situations where I would say, not guilty, but the guy that provoked the damage comes as a witness, and then we discover that they didn't take the proper penalty, and the rules now are very clear that he needs to take the proper penalty and or protest or retire from the race or whatever. John, do you want to comment on that?
I think you've covered it. I think it's a...
Okay. 62.2a, it's now time limit for the last day is in the rules, 30 minutes. It was normally in the sailing instructions. And John, do you want to comment?
Well, I mean, this is very much linked to Rule 66, to the time at which you can request a reopening. And in fact, I think we made a mistake in the last cycle that we only fixed half the problem in the rule book. So we put the bit in about requesting reopening. I can't remember which way around we've done it. But anyway, we've now fixed it in both rules. So there's a very similar rule in Rule 66 that is the 30-minute default on the last scheduled day of racing, and that's in the rule book. Now, one of the things it causes that, and we've written the rule this way, people say, why have we got an A in a rule when we haven't got a B and a C? Well, the reason is so that you can delete it easily in the sailing instructions. Because if you, at my club, when we run Wednesday evening racing throughout the season, we don't want this rule. And a lot of club racing doesn't want this rule. This is an event rule. So our sailing instructions for our club will simply say, delete rule 62.2a, and it's gone. You haven't got to write a whole lot of words.
Okay, 63.2. This was in the IJ manual anyway, and also refer case 49 as a possibility to hear 2 or more protests at the same time if the incidents are the same. Now it's a rule, or before was not a rule, was floating around. Anna, any comment?
No, I think it's crystal clear. Just to remind that Rule 69 issues shall be dealt with in a separate hearing. We won't combine Rule 69 things with other hearings.
Uh, 63.6 include hearsay as a valid evidence, but shall then give the weight it consider appropriate to the evidence presented. What is hearsay?
My understanding is if you get 5 lawyers in a room, you will get 5 different definitions of hearsay.
Somebody told me that hearsay is, so this is hearsay.
And there's been a lot of history that some protest committees refuse to hear any evidence that they consider to be hearsay. Well, that creates a real problem. Because, for example, if a race officer, if the race chairman brings into a redress claim and he brings a piece of paper written by the mark layer with a mark rounding and he presents it to the protest committee, that evidence is hearsay. And nobody wants to exclude that sort of evidence. In English law, what has happened, because I've been advised by Mr. Napier, in criminal cases, hearsay is not permitted, but in civil cases, hearsay is permitted. The important thing is that it's a very challenging thing to decide what is hearsay and not, and you probably need a legal background in some cases to make that decision. So what we're saying here is we don't need to make that decision. You hear all the evidence that is presented to you. However, you might give different evidence different weight, and that is in 63.6 delta. So if you have a race officer presents a marking sheet from a mark layer, you may give that significant weight because it was recorded at the time and there's no reason why that would be anything other than an accurate record of mark roundings. So you would give it considerable weight. But if somebody brings into a hearing a piece of paper that says, my mate gave me a drawing of the incident, but he can't come to the hearing and nobody can question him, well, you want to give that a different weight. So we solve the problem of hearsay by not about the application of hearing evidence. It's a really important change.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
We will have
We
to
have
fix
we have a lot of comments about hearsay, about the, but I think it's well covered. Let's see if you have more. Chin, John and Anna. Chin is asking where is the new protest form? He can't find it.
No, it's not on the site yet. We're working on it.
Okay. Sorry, Chin.
Oh, in fact, a lot of events have been using the form that we're going to use. It's been used at all Olympic class events for the last 2 years. So there are various versions of it around, but it needs a little bit of cleaning up, and it's a piece of work that is on our list to get done as soon as possible.
Okay, and another question back to the rule 60.1c about the reporting. Is there any requirement to report a rule 69 like we have on protest? Is there any requirement about this hearing? Report some rule 69 or support passing rule infringement?
Well, if the protest committee receive a report, one of the things that we're going to come on to is a related rule. Quite often, what a protest committee get is on a protest form what is effectively an allegation of misconduct, and it might even quote Rule 69. Well, that is a report to the committee of alleged misconduct. It is not a protest because you cannot protest under Rule 69. There's a new rule that we're going to come to which says the protest committee may I don't know if it uses the word reclassify or whatever, but it changes the type of the hearing. So the fact that somebody writes a form and says, I'm protesting Anna under Rule 69, the protest committee go, well, you might think you are, but actually you've made a report of misconduct and we are now going to handle it in accordance with Rule 69 and follow the process and the procedures of Rule 69.
Okay.
And also, I think also it's the same way when a boat want to report some rules break from the support person.
Correct. Exactly the same. Exactly.
He cannot protest a support boat or support person. He only can do a report, and the race committee will deal with the protest will deal with the call, the hearing, and everything.
Correct.
Okay, great. And I think can you make a conclusion about it? We talk about the hearsay in the court law, but can you make a conclusion? I think we can sum up.
Okay, hearsay is a very complicated area. So the approach we've taken is to say the protest committee take all evidence that's presented to them. If they are satisfied that that evidence is correct or then they give it good weight. If they think it's not so sure, they give it very low weight. And they don't actually have to address whether the evidence was hearsay or not.
Great, very clear. Thank you.
And this can include the witness by writing.
Absolutely.
The person is not there, and in this case, that we can classify as a hearsay. And
absolutely, and I'll give you a clear example where every protest committee would want to have that evidence. Supposing a crew person was in fact injured quite badly, and they go to hospital, and you get a statement from a doctor describing the injuries of that person, and that piece of paper comes into the protest hearing. That piece of paper is hearsay. But it's fundamental if you are considering Rule 14, because injury has occurred.
Great, very clear.
But it is hearsay. That doctor may never appear. You cannot require that doctor to leave the hospital and come and present evidence to a protest committee.
Okay.
So there's hundreds of examples like that where we want evidence.
And this is change the rule that says that when you receive a witness by writing and you need to ask to the party if they are.
That's a good point. And there's a Q. And we've already written. We've written the Q&A.
The advocate, David advocate, because you just rename. You say this now is hearsay.
We agree that we have not tidied up Appendix M as carefully as we might have done. Yeah, and there's a Q&A that we've already written that we're finalising at the moment, ready for that question. And what we're saying is, the rule is Rule 63.6. The guidance is in Appendix M. Appendix M is not a rule. So we have to interpret the guidance. So the guidance cannot change the rule. We understand that this is not perfect, and I'm sure it will be a submission to fix this in the future. But the guidance cannot change the rule. So when it says you accept the evidence, we are going to interpret that to be when the parties accept the evidence, we're going to interpret that to mean the parties do not dispute the evidence. So if they dispute it, you will reduce the weight that you give to that evidence because it's disputed. Is how we're going to handle it.
Okay.
And that's a bit, I accept, that's a bit tricky. And we've got to look about, is this the right way to handle it? And for sure, we've found something in the rule book already that we wished we'd done a better job. So hands up. But I'm really confident that the rule is correct. You see, in criminal cases, the reason that British law allows hearsay in criminal cases is because you can what's called subpoena people. You can force them to appear in court to give evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have hearsay because everybody has to appear in the courtroom. We have no powers as a protest committee to force anybody to come as a witness. So it's a very different circumstance.
Great. Thank very good explanation. Let's move ahead, Nelson. 63.9.
Okay, so we are in 63.9. This rule was in the correction version since January 2019.
It's not new.
It's talking about support person hearings, and just come to the right place in the book. 64, talking about decisions. 64.1, there's a lot of new concepts like a standard rule, majority decisions, reclassifying requests that was not in the old book, and A, balance of probabilities, B, vote system, C, protest can be changed to a request for redress or change for reopen. This means about the reclassification. So who wants to talk about?
I can talk about that. I think, first of all, the standard of proof is interesting because this is what we have been using in all protest committees, in all hearings, but it was not written in the book. So now it is clear for everybody that for most rules, the decision has to be based have as a rule how the protest committee should come to the decision, that is by voting, and it gives the chairman an extra weight in case of tie. And the last part of the rule will allow us to reclassify protest or request for redress or request for reopening.
Okay, so requalify the hearing. We can during the process.
And personally, I think this is a very important thing because I have seen a lot of times, a lot of protest committees just getting rid of protest or requests only because they were not the appropriate type of case. So I think this will now help the sailors more.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, do you want to add something, John?
No, I think Anna's described it all very well. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, this was in the IJ manual, and now we bring this to the rules. I think it's good because also it's questions of transparency. And then we go 64.2, not about the penalties, because now it's only about the penalties, because exoneration went to the new rule 43, sorry. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, but
no, that's
it. And 64.6, talking about discretionary penalties, that we've received some questions about.
Yeah, I mean, this will be interesting to see how it gets applied. so what we have in mind was as it says. So if a boat breaks a rule but it's subject to discretionary penalties, they can come and say, "I'm sorry, I broke that rule." And then the rule says, well, the protest committee take evidence and decide what is the appropriate penalty. And the discretionary penalty guidance already says that if somebody accepts that they've broken a rule, then you reduce the penalty. So if they come and tell you, "I'm sorry, I've broken a rule," they would get a lower penalty than if they tried to hide the fact that they've broken a rule. So it will encourage people to say, I'm very interested to see how much this gets used. But I think it was a hole. It was missing in the rule book because nobody knew what to do. If I broke a rule subject to discretionary penalties, how do I take a penalty when I don't know what the penalty is? Mm-hmm. And I should not have to retire because that's a much bigger penalty than if I went to a hearing and I got penalised. So I'm interested to see how this works out.
Interesting. Yeah.
Joe, just Nelson, when pay attention to me when I remove the phone, I still face some problem with the phone, the sound. If I remove the phone, please stop a little. It was not a problem now, but pay attention on me because maybe so you don't need to repeat it. If you do some sign like that, please stop and then I will fix it and go ahead. It's a problem with the Wi-Fi connect, the Bluetooth connector, but it's going well. Thank you. Let's move on. Just pay attention to me.
Okay. So okay, we are in 65, informing the parties and others. 65.3, the protest committee may direct that the information is to be confidential to the parties.
Well, it also says that they may publish the information set out in 65 as well, because there has been some, especially with data protection acts that have come in, and people saying you can't put that, you can't make that public, you can't make this public. It's really important under most data protection law, there is a contract between the organisers, the officials and the competitors. And the racing rules forms part of that contract. So you do not need consent to publish information if it is part of the contract. And this makes it part of the contract because it says the protest committee may publish the information, which is the facts found and the decision from a hearing. And we've made sure that that includes Rule 69 because there have been a lot of protest committees concerned about publishing Rule 69 cases. But there are circumstances when the hearing issue should be confidential. The two typical cases are mostly to do with Rule 69, if you are involved in a case where also the law has been broken, a hearing might be seen to prejudice a legal case, in which case it might need to be confidential. And also if it involves minors, people under the age of majority, whatever that is in different countries. There might be an argument for that to be confidential to the parties. I think that we will probably end up having to issue some guidance about when would it be appropriate for the protest committee to make such a ruling. But we needed the rule to enable that in the first place.
Very good. Reopen a hearing, 66. You already did some comments on that, but 66.2, a request for reopen should be in writing. 66.3, all requests for reopen shall be considered, but of course not all will be reopened.
Correct.
But when this rule was issued, a lot of people say, oh, now it's obliged to reopen. No, it's obliged to consider, but not to reopen. A, based on a new evidence. B, based on a significant error, reopen at least with one new member.
Yes, we think it's very different. If you want to bring new evidence to a protest committee, that is very different from you appealing almost against a protest committee decision because you think they've made a mistake. They're two very different circumstances. And if you want to appeal a decision because you think they've made a mistake, it seems reasonable that you should have somebody who was not involved in the original decision involved in deciding whether there was a mistake or not. But obviously at some events, club events, it's hard enough to find a protest committee, let alone finding extra people. So the word "if practical" is in there. For certain, at the Olympic Games, if we get a request to reopen, we will have different people on the panel that decide whether that case should be reopened or not, when it's based on an error by the panel.
Okay, good.
Okay. Before we go to misconduct, there is any comments, Blue, that comes from audience?
Yes. We have some few questions. David Piron is asking about 64.c, discretionary penalty. He's asking if there is a report that a boat has broken a rule subject to discretionary penalty. What is the action of the race committee? You have to call a protest. A protest.
That's a protest.
That's a protest, normal protest.
64.6 only addresses the issue when a boat herself says, "I have broken a rule." It says when a boat reports that she has broken a rule. This is an admission of a rule breach. If you're alleging that somebody has broken a rule, that's a protest.
But when it's the boat itself that it recognizes the rule, you can go direct to the penalty, the discretionary penalty. Okay.
Yes. Because the facts are not going to be in dispute. If a boat comes and admits it, the facts will not be in dispute.
We're back. Sorry, we're back. I'm trying to use this phone because there is some echo and some problem on the original test, but it's not working very well. Okay, I think there is another question from John. It's about he classified the audience. He's asking. I think we talk about that in a normal protest. The protest committee can request redress for a boat, for a sailor.
Exactly. So, and that's now very clear that is possible. It used to be a debate, and I've had protest committee members say, "Oh, the boat protested but did not request redress on the form, so we can't consider redress." Well, we think you can, and this rule says, if you hear, let me not guess the words because it's new anyway. It's in 64, isn't it? 0.6. Is it 60? No, 64. See, I'm learning this all the time now. Get the rules wrong.
What's that?
You classify the protest.
64.1.
64.1. Yes. So it's very clear that it's either based on the written request or allegation and testimony during the hearing. So in the testimony during a hearing, a number of things can happen. It can be clear that there might be misconduct. Well, now we can move to a misconduct hearing. It might be, we've heard there's probably grounds for redress. We can move to a redress hearing. Oh, the support person was involved. We need to go to a support person hearing. It's very clear now that whatever you hear, you can change the type of hearing and proceed. And that was always in doubt.
Great. Nelson, I think you can move ahead to misconduct.
Okay, so misconduct. I think that Blue makes this stop because he sell advertise, you know.
No, they all just agree. We had 2 hours, and there is some the people's resistance. Nobody's leaving. Thank you very much for almost 2 hours, but we're finished.
Yeah,
We're close to the finish.
We are in the last stage, so will take not much time.
Great job, guys.
Thank you very much for the audience to be still here, no?
But they are huge help, and it's very good talk. Very.
Okay, so misconduct 69.1. 2, conduct that may bring or has brought the sport into disrepute.
Yeah, so, it's just fixing a technical English error.
Yeah, because before it was only may bring.
Yes.
And now has brought.
Right.
Okay, 70. Appeals and requests to a national authority. 70.3, if both will pass through orders of more than one national authority while racing, an appeal or request shall send to the national authority where the finish line is located, unless the same instructions identify another national authority. So now is a standard. So if the event wants to do something different, should state in the same instructions.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah, the rules were mute about that, and it relied on the sailing instructions. We have a default position in the rules, and if we want to do something different, we need to write a sailing instruction. That's all.
And 70.5 is about to declare unappealable by the national authority. B, national authority so approve for a particular event open only to boats entered by an organization affiliate to that national authority, a member of the organization affiliate to the national authority, or, this is new, a personal member of that national authority. And in my opinion, this is open a possibility that you invite people from another countries, and if you want to have a protest committee unappellable, you invite them to be personal members of that national authority, and then you allow the national authority to prescribe 70.5b. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, part C, 6, entry and qualification. Do you have any questions or comments on part 5? Blue?
No. I think we can go ahead.
75, now use the word event. Before was race in the title of the rule, 75. 78, compliance with the class rules certificates. 78.2, set a time limit to present the certificates. Any comments? No.
No, I think it was left out by mistake in the last rule book, and we never fixed it.
And then we have 79, categorization. before was classification. We already explained the reason why the title changed, because of Paralympics. And then we go for part 7. I don't know if you want to comment something else in part 6, but this is what we just pick up. Part 7, race organization. For me, the most important is delete or promote Rule 84 as a fundamental 5. That was before 84. 90.3 is scoring. D, the race committee shall implement scoring change directed by the protest committee or national authority as a result of decisions made in accordance with this, the rules. It's clear now. Before was a little bit different. E, time limit for the last day. Also is rule. Before was in the same instructions. And then we finish part 7. And
so Nelson, may I just say, so the new E is quite a big new rule. And it has to be, the idea is that there's a drop dead time after which you cannot make scoring changes. I mean, right now, if somebody finds, if somebody watches some video of a race that happened 6 weeks ago or 6 years ago, in theory, if that's the first time they knew about it, they can still protest, and you have to deal with it. And as more and more sailing is going online and more video, you can imagine at the Olympic Games, if that happened, it would cause absolute chaos. Now, there are some rules that will not, and it's very carefully written, that you don't make scoring changes. There can still be a protest, and if it ended up with Rule 69, there's no time limit on Rule 69. There's no time limit on breach of taking drugs. So there are some exceptions, but generally there comes a point at which you cannot change the score. If you put it in the notice of race. If you don't say anything in the notice of race, this rule does not apply.
Okay, great.
Very good. Yeah, it's true. For the race, for the protest committee and the race committee, there was no limit in the past.
Correct.
Now it's more. So we say the course.
Nelson, sorry. This is the last problem of the day. Come back now. I move to appendix. I'll stop sharing the screen. Let's start again. Talk about the appendix.
Okay. No, we are almost finished, and we have a comment about Appendix A because we think this comment is important. That's allowed the race committee to scoring about that did not sail the course as a NSC without a hearing. Now this is in Appendix A 5.1. We are not going tonight in appendix, but we pick up this one because we think this is important.
And of course, a boat can still request redress if they think that's an improper action by the race committee.
Exactly. Yeah. But we save a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what we planned for tonight, and thank you very much, John and Anna, for joining us. From my side, was a great pleasure, and Blue also. Thank you very much. I learn a lot, and also I learn a lot about old rules during the process. Because we have opportunity to see the intention behind the rules, and this is important also, because sometimes we just read the flat words in the paper without the cases or without the intentions behind, and then really talking about the why the rules go in this direction is very, very rich experience. So time for the last talks.
Yeah.
John?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for giving us their time. And I'm sure there's going to be more and more questions. I'm sure the rule book is a long way from perfect, and it will keep evolving as the sport keeps evolving. Most people know how to get hold of me. And please, if you find any problems, issues with the rule book, please do something about it. Let somebody know. I'm sure you can find somebody who knows me. My email address is quite easy to find, and we look forward, hopefully, to some compliments, but also to finding some problems as well. Thank you very much for your time. And thanks, Nelson and Blue, for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Anna?
I'm not going to repeat what John has said, but I want to thank John for the huge amount of work he has done to prepare these rules, because otherwise we couldn't be talking about new rules. So thank you, John, because of all your time and your work. And thank you, guys, Nelson and Ricardo, for organizing these talks. And I think they are very helpful for everybody, and we all learn. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'll be the last word, but it's not that much. You did a lot, you know. And I know 20 years. Do you remember the Salvador, the European? It was 20 years ago. It was very fun. Joe, so many good times, and you know, you are IJ instructor and do a lot of work. Joe is amazing. I remember the Rule 42 seminar, many years. You know, talk the rules, talk about the sport you love. It's now it's now I'm trying to just a little back. I can't forget about Marianne. Marianne also did, you know, it was a big mentor for everybody here. And person like you that make the, you know, the sport noble and the sport, you know, something that we are proud of. Thank you so much for this work here.
And also, I want to say to everybody that this will be in the YouTube. If somebody wants to review or wants to share with friends, it's open, and also through the YouTube you can send later questions that we will try to find and try to answer all the questions. We will send to John and Anna later on to keep the guys working. Okay, thank you very much for everybody, and thank you for watching us.
See you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Adios.
Bye.
Adios.
Adios.
Okay, we're not live anymore, huh? Oh, it was great.